I'm Keith Gedger. Today's program is the first in this new instructional mini-series. We intend it for the new woodworker, those of you with a lot of enthusiasm and interest, but with little experience. Those of you who want to get started, but are unsure where to begin. And that's the focus for our first program in the new year, How to Get Started. One of our old friends from the Santa Cruz Woodworkers, Ron Cook, kicks off the program by talking about perhaps the most important topic for woodworkers anywhere at any skill level, safety in the workshop.
Well, I'm Ron Cook, and I'm going to talk a little bit about safety in the shop. One of the things that you really need to consider is safety for your eyes, your lungs, and your hearing. That's what I would say. I have here an assortment of protective devices. For hearing, if you're going to be using a lot of power tools, you really need to use some kind of hearing protection. These are very simple clip-on hearing protectors like that. And whenever you're using planers or routers, anything, you should protect your hearing because the high pitch of a lot of tools can, over time, hurt your hearing. For your eyes, there's several pieces of equipment that you can use for your eyes. There's magnifying protective eyewear, which if you're doing, like myself, I do carving, so I have to get very close to some of my work. So if you're doing power carving like this, where chips can be flying, put the magnifying glasses, you can get very close to these small carving details. For larger pieces, like if you're using a router, you should have full eye protection. These are just regular safety glasses. They're very inexpensive. Any hardware store carries these. There's also a strap-on type, plastic type, that's breathable too. It has vents in it, so it doesn't fog over. And when I'm using the lathe, I'll use a full mask because chips can fly. If there's any chance of a soft wood where it might snag and pop out, this will protect your whole face. And for your lungs, if you're sanding a lot, it's always a good idea to have some kind of mask on. These very simple masks, they're available at all hardware stores. You can get ones vented, just plain ones. If you're going to be doing any kind of finish work where you're using varnishes, anything that might where you're using spraying, a spray rig, there's masks that you can get that have full respirator that has it's very good for moisture if you're doing spraying, spray finishing, varnishes, shellacs, anything that you're spraying on, the mist will get caught in those the respirators and not into your lungs. To protect your hands when carving, I also have these. There's a special gloves that you can get, especially for hand carving. If you're doing any kind of hand carving where you're going against, going on grain like that, where you're holding a piece in your hand, you can carve like this, and these protect your hands if there's any slippage. The glove will keep the material from slipping, but also it's a protective coating on here that if you gouge, it's not going to go through.
If you're thinking about setting up a shop for woodworking, you'll want to consider how much space you'll need and how to configure it. That depends to some degree on the type of projects you'll be doing, as well as on the tools you buy. We asked Ron Cook and Mick Singer, both of the Santa Cruz Woodworkers, to talk about these issues.
Well, a lot of people have their workshops in their garages, but they also have to have room for their cars. So a lot of the equipment that you use has to be on wheels so you can move it in and out when you take your cars out. This is an example of a very simple roll-around tool. This joiner is on a stand that I built. You can get the wheels at hardware stores. It's always good to get locking wheels. The table saw, I have wheels on the front of it so that I can just lift up one side and it can move around to where I can use it efficiently.
Large power tools can greatly improve your productivity in your new shop. Both Mick and Ron suggested starting with a bandsaw.
It's a much safer machine. It's easier to maintain. It's easier to move around. That's probably a pretty good place to start.
Another good tool for a small shop, a power tool, is the belt and disc sander. These get used, I use these an awful lot. And if I'm gluing pieces together where I want to get a good flat edge, belt sanders are a quick way to flatten the pieces out.
All electric tools, drills, hand drills, cordless. You know, they make 18 and 24 volt cordless tools. There's really no reason to buy a corded drill anymore unless you're hogging huge holes in big timbers that you need a lot of torque. I've got, you know, 3 or 4 hand drills that I use almost every day. Little random orbit sanders. Sanding goes a lot quicker with a little random orbit sander. You can buy a $50 or $60 little one at Home Depot, or you can spend $200 or $300 on a Festool. You can make arguments both ways for you get what you pay for. You know, a belt sander, small belt sander is really good for like flattening tables and things. Hand tools, I would, you know, a decent plane that you know how to tune, some card scrapers that you know how to tune, obviously screwdrivers, things like that, a good chisel set that you know how to sharpen. Most of these things, you can buy cheap tools, you just have to know how to tune them and sharpen them. They always say that the most dangerous tool is a dull tool. That's the most important thing, is get a decent set of edge tools and know how to sharpen them and keep them sharp.
With hand tools, some of the pieces that I use an awful lot are block planes. Got jack planes up here that I use for smoothing edges for gluing. You'll always need pliers, a lot of files, rasps. The rasps are good for shaping wood, and of course chisels. You need chisels of different sizes. It's good to get a good set of chisels that, with good steel that sharpen up very well and won't wear down real fast. It's good to get a set where you can have ones that start about 1/4 inch up to 1.5 to 2 inch for butt hinges for doing hinges and doors.
I use water stones. There are all sorts of little machines on the market now, little grinders and sharpening things, and Tormek makes one, and there's a couple others that the different catalogs sell. I've never used them. They seem like a really good idea, but I've just never gotten around to them. I learned how to do it by hand, and that's kind of what I do. But you know, a good set of water stones or oil stones will do anything you need to do.
I use several different types of rotary tools here. I've got 2 different types of Dremels and what's called a Fordham. It's a brand name. It's a little more powerful carving tool. But for a beginning workshop, the hand the Dremels like these, the handheld Dremels, this is the Multi-Pro. They're fairly inexpensive, and they're very good for doing any kind of taking off grout out of tiles. There's bits that you can use for that. There's small sawtooth bits that can cut little bits of molding or small pieces of woods. For the Dremel, there's hundreds of different types of bits that you can get for these. Probably the ones that I use the most are the small carving bits like these, burr bits, and sanding bits. These are replaceable. You just unscrew that and they slip right off and you can put a new one on. But these are good for taking sanding wood, taking off paint off of pieces that you're refinishing.
Now that you set aside an area to use as your workshop and you know some of the more important what not to do's, you're ready to get started. You'll want to get an idea of what your first project is going to be and what type of wood you're going to use. Let's talk about some of the different types of wood readily available from local sources and how they relate to different types of projects. Mick Singer will guide us through the topic of wood selection.
I'm Mickey Singer. I'm one of the Santa Cruz woodworkers, and I thought I'd say a few words about wood selection for people just starting out. One of the things to think about is how confident you are in what you're going to build at any given time. I use a lot of softwoods for prototyping, for like proof of concepts of designs. If I have an idea that I'm not quite sure if it's going to work or not, get some cheap wood, work it out, and then once you figured out what you're doing, then you buy better wood that's a little more expensive. Even though it feels like you're spending wood that you're not going to use and it feels like a waste, you end up spending less in the long run by screwing up a bunch of cheap wood than screwing up one or two pieces of expensive wood. So it really does kind of work out better in the long run. For inexpensive sources of wood, rather than going to like Home Depot or one of those and buying what they have on the shelf, I mean, what they've got, or Orchard Supply or any of those, their shelving has been milled and they're trying to present it as good wood, so it might be a little more expensive. I would go to some place like Jackal Enterprises or Aura Hardwoods or one of those and see what they have on sale. You know, I've often found stuff for $1 a board foot that's on clearance. This willow was a really nice find. They had bought some of it and it wasn't selling and they were just trying to clear it out. It's a soft wood, so it's not the greatest for furniture, but I made a really nice cabinet out of it, and it polished up really nicely, and for $1 a foot you can't beat it. Other things to use are like pine from pallets. You don't even have to go to the store. This was an old shipping crate that I got some materials in and I milled it up, just, you know, rough cut it, and I use it. It just kind of hangs around, and some of it gets burned and some of it hangs around for prototyping parts of things if I want to get shaping down right. Another inexpensive offcut is redwood. You know, if you know anybody that's pulling out a deck, redwood decking is fine for prototyping, where you know, if you want to make a bench or a table or something and you want to work out how to build it. Once you've got it built, put it outside and it's garden furniture. As far as a little bit more furniture type woods, poplar is a good one. This is kind of a small piece, but poplar's usually only a couple of bucks a board foot, $3. It's a relatively hard wood. It's not hard like mahogany or oak or maple, certainly, but it's harder than like pine or fir. It works well. It's sort of the standard paint grade material if you're going to paint a project. That's good, and it's usually